Go ahead and get started, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining
Haley,
us.
wait just a second. Let's make sure Larry's ready to go live.
I think he sent me a note and said he
Oh, did he? Okay, good deal.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get started, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Public Assembly Facilities Commission meeting today. I'm going to start with our official statement here. I'm calling this meeting to order. Good afternoon. Due to the governor's order, all members of the Public Assembly Facilities Commission are participating virtually. For virtual meetings, commission members will be muted until asked to be heard. At that time, they will be recognized and will be unmuted. When there is a vote, it will be necessary to take a roll call vote. A commission member will be recognized and will raise their hand and state their vote. Today's meeting is a public meeting. Citizens can listen to the meeting if they contacted the city manager's office to take the necessary arrangements. The meeting will also be live streamed on the city's YouTube channel and can be accessed on the city's website. A recording of today's meeting will be available by Friday, May 21st, 2021 on the city's website. Again, thank you everyone for joining today. We're going to start with an approval of our minutes. Thank you, Carrie, for sending out the minutes last month. Could I have a motion from a commission member to approve?
Haley, one moment. We probably need to do a roll call.
Sorry, roll call vote. Sorry, a roll call attendance. Yeah.
Attendance, yes.
Rolling right along. Thanks, Carrie.
Haley, as I know. Otis?
Present.
Billy Rich?
Present.
Jim Rose?
Here.
Manya?
Here.
Kathleen Garber? She will not be able to be here today. Vicki Miller?
Present.
Lisa Strout?
Here.
And Ray Bowden.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Next, we'll go on to the approval of the April minutes. Could I have a commission member make a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
A motion has been made and seconded. Is there any question? All in favor, we'll take this vote by roll call, please.
Haley?
Aye.
Otis?
Aye.
Billy?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Manya?
Aye.
Vicki?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead right into our next agenda item, the resolution recommending City Council approval of the proposed fiscal year 21-22 operating budgets for the Benton, Winston-Salem Fairgrounds, Carolina Classic Fair, Bowman Gray Stadium, and downtown Ballpark.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair Jingles and members of the Public Assembly Facility Commission. Just want to make a few opening remarks before I turn it over to Patrice Toney, who's our the city's budget and evaluation director, who will present the budgets this afternoon. I apologize first for sending the budgets to you this morning. We've been working on those budgets, up until late last week. And a couple things I just wanted to kind of share with you. It'll be kind of a theme as we go through the numbers. Number one, obviously, in light of what the CDC and the governor announced last week, that potentially changes our assumptions for how we will operate going into next fiscal year. When we developed the budgets, we were operating under the assumption that there would still be restrictions in place. We felt like we'd be able to hold events, but still wanted to be conservative in terms of how we were budgeting. So that's what you're going to see here in a few minutes as Patrice goes through the numbers, is our conservative estimates on the revenues and also conservative estimates on expenses as we are also looking to gear back up to reopen. So there's that. And then secondly, we're still working through understanding the guidance that just came out of the U.S. Treasury about the federal dollars that the city is set to receive, the $51 million. We're hoping that we'll use some of those funds to restore our Fairgrounds fund. And as you'll see here in a moment as well, we're projecting that we would be in the hole in terms of our cash reserves. And so those funds would be greatly needed to help get that fund back on track. But right now, what you'll see is an assumption that those funds are not available for that purpose. And that is based on the guidance that we've received at this point. There's a 60-day comment period that we're in. And I think the hope is a lot of local governments will be reaching out to Treasury, expressing, asking questions and even expressing concerns about how some of that language right now maybe restricts how we can use some of the funds to restore lost revenue. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patrice and let her present the budgets to you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Patrice Toney, Budget and Evaluation Director, and I am presenting this on behalf of Sarah Coffey, who couldn't be with us today. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so today, as Ben mentioned, we'll review the Public Assembly Facilities Commission's budget that includes Benton, Fairgrounds, Carolina Classic Fair. Okay, so this first slide is the Benton, and it is the Hospitality Venture Management Group operating proposed budget. The top section shows the revenues, which are mainly banquet revenue. So total revenue changes is about $300,000 or 13.1% decrease from proposed budget, budgeted 21 to the proposed budget for FY22. And so the budget takes in consideration the impact of COVID in FY21 and then the further impact projected for FY22. And once again, there's still a lot of uncertainty around that. And so these are conservative revenue estimates. On the expenditure side, we're looking at about $114,000 decrease from the fiscal year 21 budgeted number to the proposed. So that's 3.5% change in the projected or proposed expenses. So total loss, when you combine the revenues with the expenditures for this current year, was approximately $932,000. And for the proposed, you see their additional loss projected at $1.1 million. So the total change in the loss is about 20.2%.
Patrice, let me just step in real quick and just recognize Grant to see if he has any additional comments he wants to make about how HVMG will work with the proposal.
Good afternoon, everybody. So you look at the budget in 2021, and we really didn't know what was going to happen. So when we wrote that budget, we pretty much put all the revenue in the second half of the year, thinking that by January things would be back to normal. Obviously that didn't happen. As you can see later on in our financials, so through the third quarter we've only brought in $41,000 in revenue. So when we started putting the budget together this year, obviously it was before the announcement this week, we looked at the revenue and we looked at it in two different ways. We looked at the first 6 months, looking at the fall and thinking, we're going to be some more, the restrictions are going to be lifted just a little bit. So we thought, when we'll look at what's on the books, and then we'll take 25% away from September, October, and November, which are our big months normally, and kind of give us that number. So we thought that would get us where we need to be. And then the second half, that we would be back more open and going there. But we still want to be very conservative and right in the budget. That's our mentality, was be a little cautious in the fall and then start opening back up in the last 6 months of the year. I feel very comfortable that we will achieve this number. Just the number of bookings that we've started to see just since last Thursday on my emails and things like that. People are wanting to meet. We just don't know if they're going to meet 100% yet. It really makes a big difference there. If you look at the expenses, one of the biggest areas you'll see there is sales and marketing. In the pandemic, we laid off almost everyone in the sales staff. So with the sales staff gone, have to rebuild now. We have to bring those folks back, and so we're going to start ramping up the staff so that we can start to book for 22, 23, 24. 2021 is pretty much done booking wise, but moving into 22, 23. So we will start probably in July. We're looking for a director of sales and marketing right now. Hopefully that position will come on in June, and then that person can start building the staff. Another place that looks a little different there is information and the IT area there. When we went to the pandemic, we moved people around so they had multiple jobs. So our IT person at the time, last year when we wrote the budget, really worked other places than IT, so he got coded to a different area of the budget. So that's why it stands out a little bit there. So any real questions on how we came up with the budget or the revenue number?
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, Ben. Patrice?
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to the city budget for the Benton. Management fees is almost the same, 1.4% change. The operating deficit, as you saw on the previous slide, these are the same numbers and the city's expenses to cover that. Other expenses like insurance and building maintenance is about a 6.2% increase. So total expenses increases by 16.2%. The how to pay for this is a transfer from the occupancy tax fund, and so that slightly increases about 24%, and then a transfer from the general fund, which is $1.1 million or 14% increase. So total transfers to cover the cost for the Benton is 16.2% increase from our current year budget. Okay. So this slide just shows highlights of both of the slides that we just reviewed for the Benton. This slide is just a visual of the city share for the convention center operations. And so you saw where the general fund and the occupancy tax both cover those funds on the city side. The light yellow is our general fund, and the light blue is the occupancy tax fund over several fiscal years since FY12. You'll see it's pretty steady these first 4 fiscal years on this chart. It jumps up in FY16, and that was due to renovations of the Benton. And then you see it drops off here in FY19. It was close to breaking even, and things were going really well at the Benton. And then in FY20s, when the pandemic shows up with all of the uncertainties related to that, FY21, this is the subsidy currently. And then you see FY22, the proposed subsidy to the Benton from the general fund and the occupancy tax. Okay, for the the 22 through 27 capital plan for the Benton capital contribution, the qualified management agreement with the Hospitality Ventures Management Group includes a provision for the city to provide $250,000 contributions toward identified capital expenses annually. These improvements will be financed over 5 years through the North Carolina Municipal Leasing Corporation, with the general fund covering the annual payment. So this $250,000 includes mechanical equipment at $110,000, tables and banquet equipment at $90,000, and then there's a $50,000 contingency built into this amount. Okay, moving on to the fairgrounds. You see that this is the fairgrounds chart. The green columns show the FY21 or current year budgeted amount, and then this column shows the FY22 proposed. And so the assumptions remain very similar, as you notice, for the proposed in the fairgrounds. So it's less than a 1% proposed change in the revenues. And then when we go down to the expenses, we're looking at a 1.8% change from the FY21 budgeted amount to the FY22 proposed. So you see very little changes in the personnel, very little changes in supplies, increase in the debt expenses, about 3% increase. And then there is a transfer to Bowman Gray Stadium built in at $76,000. So that's a 5.75% increase. So total bottom line net loss, you can see obviously fairground administration is about 1 million. Non-fair events is about 300,000. The budget looks like about a 300,000 net income for the Carolina Classic Fair, and all of these are estimates based on what we know now. And then the proposed budget shows a $1 million net loss, or 5.64% decrease. Okay, so these are just some highlights of what we just reviewed for the fairgrounds. And so the budget it transferred from the general fund. We're still reviewing the American Rescue Plan Act, the $55 million that is coming to the city. We're still trying to make sure we know exactly what we can and can't use this money for. Hopefully we can add the subsidy for the fairgrounds and the loss of revenue that we had due to the pandemic. And so we will update the budget accordingly once we confirm that this is an allowable expense.
If I could just chime in there real quick, Patrice. So what you see, that's different from previous years is we're covering the loss out of the general fund. So taxpayer dollars are being used right now in this version of the budget to cover the loss in the fairgrounds. If we're able to restore the reserves in the fairgrounds fund, then obviously we would use that to cover the loss rather than general fund. Of course, that then still sets us on a track of pulling those reserves down. But then our hope is, in light of what happened last week, we'll be looking at a fair that's probably closer to our normal fair, and as opposed to something where we have more of a restricted opening. So hopefully we're being sufficiently conservative with these numbers.
Okay, thanks, Ben. And this just shows the fair attendance since 2005. So the black line is the total attendance. The green line is the paid attendance. So these are the people that pay to get in the fair. Robert's given a lot of things away free. I'm just kidding, Robert. But you can see that here in 2018, we were doing well with attendance, and then you see the major drop off due to the pandemic.
Yeah, and just so for clarity, for those things we give away free, to Patrice's point, is the seniors 55, I think it's 55 and older, it might be 65, and then the children 5 and under. So that's kind of that difference in that number. And then there's also Wednesday, which is canned food day, which is arguably our largest attended day each fair. And most of those folks are free admission as well.
Thank you, Robert, for that clarity. Okay. And then this is the Winston-Salem Fairgrounds Fund Reserves. This is a long-range financial outlook. So even if we have the fair this year, due to the uncertainty, maybe limited attendance, and then factoring in non-fair events, the fund is showing a decline. Now, if in the event we are able to utilize ARPA funds to help subsidize this Fairgrounds fund, this outlook would look a little bit better. But for right now, just based on what we know, we see pretty much a decline in this fund going forward until there's some significant subsidies to it. Okay, so moving on to Bowman Gray. The overall revenues from budget to proposed is about a 20% change. Concessions looks a lot better from the current year budget at $90,000. So that's about a 72% increase. Facility rental, there's increases there, 10%. So the budget assumes racing with reduced capacity for FY21 season. It's about 75%. For FY20 was about 75%. And it also assumes Winston-Salem football in FY21 with reduced capacity and reduction in homecoming attendance. So net loss of about $76,000. For the revenues do reflect some improvement over FY21 budget, which assumed no racing or football season in 2020. Racing estimated to return to full capacity for FY21, and concessions revenue reflects contracted 30% of sales. On the expense side, the expenses reflect racing and WSSU football as well at reduced capacity for FY21 and a better outlook for FY22. Operation of the stadium through the Winston-Salem Fairgrounds staff and contractual services. Contractual services include temp workers, cleaning, and event management. So total expenses increases by 17.2%. So the net loss is $76,000, which is a 6% change from the FY21 budgeted amount.
Just a couple of thoughts to add to Patrice's presentation. So as she noted, we didn't have a 2020 season, and the budget for the current year, 2021, reflected that, thinking that we would start having, that the season would start back up here in 2021. And what we assumed going into next fiscal year was that the 2021 season would be operating at a restricted capacity. We'd be back to normal for the 2022 season. Obviously, that's going to change because right now the plan is for the June 5th race, the first race of the season, they will be opening at full capacity, no restrictions under the governor's orders. And so while we have lost the races from April and May, so we feel like, we needed to reflect that in our numbers. My hope is that you'll see the concession number better than what we budgeted, because we'll be at full capacity for the remainder of the season and into football, as opposed to some percentage less. So, but with that in mind, on the expense side, we still have to get the stadium prepared. We still have to incur the expenses, whether it's through temporary labor and supplies to get the stadium ready, whether we're racing or having football at full capacity or at partial capacity. So that's why you see the tug of those two sides of the budget.
Okay. This is just a summary of what we just reviewed. And then moving on to the downtown ballpark. FY21 is 1.8, and so the proposed budget for revenues is $858,000. $1,000. So you see a 0 for the ticket surcharge, and then you have the other revenue at $858. So that's a 52.7% reduction in the revenue. And so there is a change in the lease agreement with the dash. And so on the expense side, you see that the insurance is increased by 19%, and the debt expenses decreased by 12.6%. So total expenses is a decrease of 12.1%. So net income or loss is really a loss of $532,370. This includes a transfer from the debt service fund to balance.
So
Anything you want to add there, Ben?
Yeah, just a couple of comments there. So as Patrice noted, the council approved back in February a new lease agreement with the Dash for Truist Stadium that essentially cut the lease payments in half and entered into a new 25-year lease with them. So that, whereas before the lease was structured to where the lease payments made by the team would cover the debt expenses that the city incurred to complete the stadium, that no longer is the case. So that $532,000 loss that you see there will be covered by the debt service fund. We have the capacity in the fund to cover that. The debt will be paid off before the new lease ends. So once that happens, the ongoing payments from the team will enable us to basically restore our debt reserves and put us in a position where we can make investments in the stadium in the future. I will share with you, you've probably read it in the paper, that Major League Baseball has indicated that the lease agreement as currently presented to the Dash will not receive their approval. And the major point of discussion right now is adding language that would allow reductions in the rent if the team cannot hold a game because of government restrictions or some other event that's beyond their control, or that they can only operate at a reduced capacity. So this budget does not reflect any of that. This budget reflects what the council approved. But I did want to let you know that we are continuing discussions, with the team and through the team, Major League Baseball, in trying to finalize the lease agreement. So we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about any of the budgets at this point.
Hey, Ben, when does the ballpark debt pay off compared to the lease maturity of 25 years?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Lisa Saunders on that. I think the lease would go from 2021 to 2046. And I think that the debt's paid off in the late 2030s, I think.
That's correct, Ben. It is.
So under the schedule, the team would continue to make a lease payment even after we've paid off the debt.
Okay, so there's, and the gap with escalations, I guess, would get us back whole. Was this, did we feel that the one that, and obviously everything can change, but did we feel that where we were in February, I think I saw where, the thought was that this was, if not completely, pretty close to revenue neutral, assuming they stay in the lease the full 25 years and it doesn't get renegotiated again. Is that where we thought we were?
Well, I mean, you're right, Otis. I mean, over the term of the agreement, the city would be whole.
Okay.
But you're right. I mean, who knows what might
the reality.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And just so you know too, I mean, what's being presented to us by Major League Baseball and the team would require us to come back to council for approval because we did not contemplate any kind of base rent adjustments beyond the 50% reduction that was approved.
Ben, I know you were reaching out to some of the other cities around with ballparks, and you may not be able to share here, but I was just curious if what you heard from them as far as feedback they may have gotten on their contracts with MLB.
Yeah, I haven't had an opportunity yet to reach out to them. I plan to reach out to Durham
Sure.
and Annapolis and Fayetteville. I will say though that I went out on did some research online. I think it's called Baseball Journal, a publication, and I saw a number of articles where a number of teams, minor league teams across the country, are having serious discussions with Major League Baseball about the facility requirements that Major League Baseball is putting in place for minor league stadiums. So I'm not only going to reach out to other cities that own stadiums in North Carolina, but just looking at what's going on across the country, there seems to be a little bit of a push-pull there going on between the minor league teams and maybe MLB.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Any other questions about the proposed budgets? So the action item before you all this afternoon is a resolution that would recommend to council approval of the proposed budgets for our public assembly facilities.
Commissioners, if there are no further questions, could we have a motion to accept this resolution?
So moved that we accept the resolution.
Second.
Thank you all. A motion has been made and has been seconded. Is there any question? All in favor, let it be known by a roll call vote, please.
Haley,
Aye.
Otis,
Aye.
Billy,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Manya,
Aye.
Vicky,
Aye.
Lisa, Ray.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll now move into the review of the fiscal year 2020-2021 third quarter financial statements, please.
Okay, with that, I will recognize Lisa Saunders and I believe Dewey Williard to present those statements to you all today. So this is through March, so 9 months into the fiscal year, this fiscal year.
Good afternoon, Commission members. Yes, Dewey Williard, Accounting Services Manager, is going to review the statements with you today.
All right. I hope that my
Yes.
screen you were able to see. We're going to begin with the Carolina Classic Fair statement. First of all, I would just say that I worked with the Public Assembly Facilities Commission for a long time, and it's very interesting that I'm back doing this presentation. I hope possibly in the future that I'll have a chance to meet you. And so I will get to know who's listening to me right now. This is going to be a very high-level presentation of the statements, basically because you know the causes for what has happened in fiscal year 21. If you will look at the total operating revenues compared from 2020, you can see we decreased $3 million, or 98% decrease for the year. Moving on down to our total operating expenditures, it increased 1.5 million, or 74% decrease. And the bottom line is our loss. We have a loss of 1.5 million more than the gain we had last year. So it was 155% decrease to the bottom line. Are there any questions as far as the fair goes? Again, I believe that you're all aware of what we're what we're looking at. I don't think it's a surprise to you, but it's basically the, since we did not have a fair, you know where we're going. The next statement is the Winston-Salem Fairgrounds. And again, it's more the same. If you look at our total operating revenues, you can see they decreased $3 million. And that's a 98% decrease from the previous year. If you move down to our total operating expenditures, they went down $1.5 million or a 74% decrease. And the bottom line again is we went from having actually, I am looking at the wrong thing. So I never did turn my page on my notes. So let's go back up here again. The difference in the operating revenues is 3.6 million. It's an 88% decrease. The total operating expenditures went down $2 million or almost 2.1 million for a 57% decrease. And the bottom line is, again, we went from an income situation last year to a loss. That's a $1.6 million decrease, a 464% decrease in operations. Are there any questions on this? Continuing to move along. Bowman Gray Stadium, we have loss of revenue of 182,000 or a 73% decrease. Our operating expenditures decreased $198,000, a 50% decrease. And the bottom line actually improved. And you can see that was from, we had a transfer in this year from the Fairgrounds, but the bottom line is it increased 71,000 or a 43% increase. Are there any questions? Okay. The last statement that I show is the city look at the Benton Convention Center. The operating loss went from 253,000 to 832,000. That's 580,000 increase in the loss, 229% decrease. The non-operating expenditures actually increased 24,000 or a 10% increase. And just to show you the bottom line to the general fund support, went from 263 to 911 or a $648,000 increase, a 246% increase. Do you have any questions?
Do we want to step in and ask Grant if he has anything he'd like to add about the Benton?
As you can see, and through the third quarter, we've only had $41,000 worth of revenue. And you know, the good news is in April and May, we started to see some business. May is actually going to be about $126,000 right now. So that's good news. We really thought it was going to be more like 60 there. So we're starting to see some uptick in the revenues there. But it's, you know, it's slow, and, you know, staffing is still a big issue for us. Any questions on the Benton?
Okay. Haley, that's all as far as the third quarter financials.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. We'll move on to staff updates.
Okay, we've got a little, kind of a slideshow we wanted to share with you. So we're going to kind of work through these updates as we go through the slideshow. One thing I did want to note that I didn't mention when we were reviewing the budget for next fiscal year 21-22 is we will be adding a budget for the Grand Pavilion at some point. We're still working through the transition with the Embassy Suites owner as far as getting the booking data transferred over to HVMG, so we actually know what's on the books in the coming fiscal years, but also to try to look at some history to be able to build a budget on what the expense will be. When we have that in place, we'll bring that to you all as another recommendation to council, but that probably won't happen until sometime in the first quarter of the new fiscal year. All right, Carrie, do you have the slideshow?
Sure. Unless, Robert, did you want to? I don't know that I've ever done that before. I apologize.
Let's see here.
You guys see my screen here?
There you go.
So yeah, I'll just, Ben, I don't know if you want me to start off or which order we want to go in. There's two different orders here on the agenda and the slide.
Well, let's just work through the slides and we'll just check them off as we go.
Awesome. So I'll jump off. Thanks you, Chair Jingles, and we'll go start with the Fairgrounds Farmers Market. A lot of you we've talked through this over the last few months, and so we've got some pictures here to show y'all, and hopefully someday we'll get y'all out here in person to see these improvements. They look really good. Staff's done a great job. So just the Farmers Market main entrance. Here's some highlighted pictures. We added some of this wood fencing. Kind of delineate some parking lanes here, and then we've added some, I'm going to say vintage farming equipment, don't quote me on that, but some kind of unique look to the front related to some of the equipment we had in our maintenance facility that we could repurpose. And then that ties in with the Combat Hunger, Think Orange mural that we posted late last year. Again, revisiting the murals, attached are the two murals here, one on the west side here with the tractor, and then the other with the pollinator and the bees and the flowers and the butterflies. So those have been real eye-catching, a lot of good feedback on those, and something the artist is really proud of. And he's actually going to come back and touch up some of the windows, and we're going to install some plexiglass instead of glass there to avoid any future breakage, kind of make it more of a permanent item as far as the window pieces go. So the interior of the farmers market, these are items that have all been done in the last month or so. We've got new fans installed, large fans. There's two of them. They're installed in the middle of the bays. There's 3 bays. We've got the 2 of them in the middle that will draw air in or out based on the temperature of the season. We've fully installed all new electrical outlets all the way around. A lot of the old ones had paint embedded inside. They weren't functional, and these are all GFI approved, so that's a long way from where we were with those panels that were in there. Here's some new panels that we installed as part of the lighting project, and these lights that you see here are all LED, and they're at the top, and we really did that so that you could still see the wood framing and the roof and the ceiling. It's a really sharp look of the clean wood up there, and we wanted to keep that that look as we went through and did this, because we talked about lowering lights, and we just felt like this kept your presence with the nice roof and ceiling there. Bowman Gray Stadium. So we're just kind of highlighting where we're at. These pictures are updated as of last Friday, so very current. But still, even looking at this is to your right, the picture on the right is the second restroom that's going to be built. And even today, I think going out there, I was out there this morning, they've already got the steel frames going higher, and I think they've got some of the arches up there. Again, excuse my construction language here. The video board there, this is just showing that we replaced the signage for the upcoming race season. So that's all ready to go for the June 5th opening weekend. The picture to the right is all the stands have been completely pressure washed. That's completed. It took about 3 weeks, but they got all the bleachers and all the concrete pressure washed, including these back walls. This picture to your left are showcasing just some of the new urinals in place in the men's restroom. And then the picture to your right is the second concession stand that will be completed on site. So here's some more pictures of the restrooms, the exterior with the paint and the signage, the water fountains here. This is a bottle filler water fountain, and then just the new sinks and the soap dispensers. Picture to the left here is the new fencing that's kind of going around all the ticket booths. Part of that fencing that it was put in for future metal detectors when they come into play at Bowman Gray Stadium, based on what we found out from a consultant, a security consultant, and with Frank L. Bloom and the construction team, is we would need to place the metal detectors out front of the ticket booth as there wasn't room behind them. So the fencing is there in that case to keep those items secure when we're not on site. And then to the right will be the new Ram seats. So if y'all remember the new red or the old red plastic chairs that were in sections 26 and 27, these will take the place of those. They'll have the red handles and the red framing with the black mesh seating. Similar to some seats, I think the Dash have some of these seats outdoors in their premium seating area, and then there's stadiums all throughout the country that also use these. So we did confirm that. It is a local company, Four Tops, I believe works right off Renolda Road down a ways, and then there's a good warranty system with that. Should some of that stitching or mesh fade, we've got some warranty programming with that. The picture here to your left is the concession stand, which is set to be complete this week. We have the health department coming in on Wednesday. I believe there's a plumbing inspection taking place tomorrow. So this will be ready to go by June 5th, pending any major setbacks. And then to the right is a good picture of some of the new drains that were put in around the track and the football field. And that is your new football field, which is already turning very green. It's looking really good. It's nice and flat, as you can see. You can see the track on the other side. And as Ben mentioned in the last meeting, I think we showed you a picture of probably a 3-foot tall dirt pile in the middle of the field that kind of peaked that crown. So this is a great improvement. And it's something even racing folks have told us the drivers are going to have to get used to actually seeing cars on the other side of the track. So we'll see how that shapes up June 5th. So this is the inside of the first concession stand that will be completed this week. And I'm going to, I think, kick this to Grant or Ben.
This will be me. So thank you, Robert. So I think that we've really kind of touched on, kind of where the stadium is. Preparations are continuing. We're all gearing towards that June 5th opening date. I don't know, Robert, if there's anything more we want to add about that. I mean, obviously we've got to we're doing a lot of the, landscaping and just, the mowing and everything, trimming to get around the site cleaned up and ready to go. So,
yeah, as far as just being ready for racing, I think we're in really good shape. We're probably 95% of the way there. It's really just a good cleanup and then just coordinating with the construction folks and our team, making sure we're not cleaning something or fixing something and then they come back and undo it. So that's really, it's just a communication line and being ready. And I think we're in good shape.
Yep. So we'll skip and talk a little bit about the Grand Pavilion here and then maybe a little bit about the Benton, and then we'll finish up with the Fairgrounds. So, so back in, last, I guess it was in April, Council approved the purchase of the carpet that we'll be buying to replace carpet in the Grand Pavilion and in the pre-function areas of the or the hallways of the Grand Pavilion Conference Center space. And this slide here just shows you kind of what the carpet looked like in the Big House Games ballroom and in the hallway there outside of the ballroom and outside the Grand Pavilion. Or if you'll click on the next slide. So some more before pictures. So that's the Grand Pavilion carpet you see there on the left. And then this is the Grand Pavilion pre-function space carpet that you see when you exit out the doors there into that area where the large chandelier is located. Next slide there, Robert. So this is a picture of the carpet pattern that will replace the carpet that's in the Grand Pavilion and the Big House Games ballrooms. One of the goals was to try and tie this space back into the Benton. So we didn't want to install necessarily the exact same kind of carpet, but a carpet with similar, a similar palette, if you will, so that it can kind of tie back in. And when people come to the Benton and they go into the Grand Pavilion, it'll feel like you're in one facility. So Robert, go to the next slide. So the next slide shows the carpet pattern that'll be in the Arbor rooms, which are in the conference center part of the space, some of the breakout rooms, and then the games foyer, so the open space outside of the games ballroom. So here again, tying on to the pattern there that's going to be used in the Grand Pavilion, but then having some more solid, what they call, I guess, outfill there, on the edges. Go to the next slide there, Robert.
Yep, this is it.
The next one after that. So this is a rendering of what the Grand Pavilion space will look like once we finish the project. And so this month here in April, the council is going to award the contract to actually do what I'm calling a refresh project of the space, and hopefully that'll be done at the end of August or maybe even early September. We are having to activate the space this month for the Home Educators Conference, which will take place May 27th through the 29th. So that may put off starting the project a little bit, but this is what the vision is for what the Grand Pavilion space will look like when the project is completed. So we're very, very excited about it. Robert, you can just go through the next slides very quickly. So this is just a layout of the Grand Pavilion, the conference center. You can see kind of that's the scope of what we're looking at, is refreshing most of that space. This is the hallway as you're coming through the tunnel from the Benton and going towards the Grand Pavilion space. And you can see where we're replacing new carpet there and some other carpet within those breakout rooms. And then that's the Gaines Ballroom and the foyer space there, that custom carpet that I showed initially, and then some what they call the running line carpet there in the foyer. And then finally, I think we're also replacing the flooring there in the restrooms that are off of the Grand Pavilion. They're kind of back in the corner opposite from the main entrance into the Grand Pavilion. And then finally, the Grand Pavilion itself. And you can see all that will be new custom carpet. So very excited about that. I think once this project's done, we may cease calling it the Grand Pavilion. I think we are going to look at how we can rebrand that space and tie it more formally into the Benton.
Hey, Ben, are we gonna remove those mirror glass that's all around the place?
Yes, that is part of the scope, is to get rid of those mirrors.
Great. It has always been a problem when we light it for events.
Yes, absolutely. Good question, Billy. Yeah, it's going to, like it's shown in that rendering, I think a whole new look. And that's it. That's the update on the Grand Pavilion Conference Center. Grant, is there anything you want to add about the Benton?
We are finishing up this week the lighting project for the Salem Ballroom. So we'll have 100% new lighting system in there. That was left out during renovation. And so that should be completed by Monday. We are getting ready for home education. So we'll have what I call Benton South, the Grand Pavilion space. We'll have all the proper signage and hand sanitizing stations and everything up for that group. And then obviously we will get that group out of there, and then we will hopefully start construction on June the 1st. I really don't have anything else unless anybody has questions about the Benton.
Okay, and finally, Robert, anything about the Fairgrounds or the Carolina Classic Fair?
Yeah, I'll just continue on kind of off Grant's mentioned there. So we at the Fairgrounds actually just hosted our first indoor concert this past Friday with John Michael Montgomery. And it went very well. We actually had the concert under the guidance of pre-Governor Cooper's announcement at 1:30 that same day. So we still did require masks, and we did require social distancing, and we honored that for those guests in attendance. We ended up having about 700 folks in the building. I think everything went off fine. No real issues. 2 weeks prior to that, we held our first real trade show since, probably almost a year ago to that day, where the gun show came back, and we had some small issues with the vendors, but overall the public, I think, respected the stuff we had in place, and everything went well. So it sounds like moving forward, a lot of the restrictions are going to drop off. And I don't know if, Ben, you want to speak to kind of moving forward, but
yeah.
I'll Ben, if you want to jump in.
Yeah,
quick.
so just to wrap things up, a couple of other things. I know we got one more item on the agenda about marketing, but yeah, in light of the governor's order, which basically lifted all the restrictions, what staff is planning to share with council will be maybe more of a slow lifting of the restrictions. In other words, it's right now masks are not required in our facilities. We're going to have signage up that still recommends that folks wear mask coverings. Recognize the fact that not everybody has been vaccinated, and just really kind of take a little more deliberate pace as far as opening back up in that regard, going back to fully pre-pandemic normal. So we'll still have signage in all of our facilities, the Benton, the Fairgrounds, even at Bowman Gray Stadium, recommending mask coverings, recommending that if they're in the restroom that they wash their hands and that they wear masks. At the entrances to our facilities, basically say if you're showing symptoms like a fever, a cough, all those COVID symptoms, that they reconsider coming into the facility. And probably even will have still some of our social distancing dots in place, whether it's leading up to the concession stands or ticket booths or within the Benton. Again, just encouraging folks to still think about and practicing social distancing. So that's kind of what I would call a floor that we're setting. The governor's order is a floor. We're setting our floor. If we have event organizers who want to have a more restricted event or want to have more social distancing in terms of how they set up a space, that type of thing, that we will absolutely honor those protocols for those particular events. So right now, I mean, I would say we're kind of easing into this. Still want to recommend to folks that they be careful, because it's important, for us to communicate that we want our events to be safe, but we're not necessarily going to be enforcing, anything per se. It'll be more of a switching from requirement to a recommendation. So, but we wanted to share that with you this morning and get your feedback about that, and if you feel like this is the direction we need to head in, and what we might want to communicate to the council. The mayor, I think, will be issuing an amended declaration to his emergency declaration here soon. But wanted to get some feedback from you all about kind of what we're thinking in terms of our public assembly facilities.
Well, Ben, I think a little more cautious approach, like you suggest, is a good idea.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? Okay, well, if in the meantime, you have any other, ideas or just thoughts you'd like to share, please email me or Robert or Grant, and just, we appreciate your feedback, but that's kind of where we're headed at this point. So just want to share that with you. Last item on the agenda, marketing committee discussion of future programming at the fairgrounds. So I wanted to share with you all that here in the last couple of months, the city has created the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion to look at those issues within the city organization. Ultimately, the work of that office will be outward focused, but right now we want to focus internally and on making sure that our policies, our operations, are viewed and implemented with what we call an equity lens. And part of that is looking at our programming at the fairgrounds. Over the years, I think that we've tried to book a diverse programming of events, but I think that still there's a lot of opportunities there to increase the diversity of our programming. And so one thought that staff has had is reaching out to the marketing committee for the commission, engaging you all to help us with getting feedback from the community or just your ideas about how we can improve the diversity of our programming. We have a lot of popular concert series and events over the course of the year, but I think the feeling is we could do even more, and so we want to reach out to you all for some input, maybe even just some ideas of how we can engage the community to get feedback on how we can provide more diverse programming at the fairgrounds. And so this item is just to kind of put this on your radar. I have invited our director of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion to come and speak to you all about the city's program and about the equity lens, and kind of give you that foundational information about what the city's trying to do. But then I would like to suggest that in the coming months that the marketing committee convene to start discussing what we can do there and what kind of engagement we need to have with the community, whether it's various groups like the student populations of our universities or what have you, to give us some feedback on what kind of programming can we provide at the fairgrounds to make sure we're reaching all the populations, our diverse populations within the city. So I just wanted to kind of put that on your radar screen.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Ben. Those of us that are on the marketing committee are definitely willing to help in any kind of way we can.
Thank you.
Commission members, is there anything further for our city staff? Hearing nothing, we will have our next meeting on June 21st. Thank you everyone for all your presentations today. They were very beneficial and educational today, so thank you for doing that. And we'll see everyone on June 21st. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you.